U.S. Federal Reserve show more rate hikes coming. Concern about stablecoin risks are here as well. U.S. Federal Reserve governors anticipate announcing more interest rate hikes increases in the coming months, but the pace of the hikes will likely slow if inflation rates start to come down. That's like, hey guys, if inflation starts to come down, the interest rate hikes are gonna slow down. Just in case you were wondering how this all works. Now, what we were expecting, of course, was going to be a 50 BPS for this next round, just based off of the CPI data that we was reported to be lower, of course, down to, I believe, in the US 8.5%. But, you know, I think in the euro we saw this month was the highest ever at 8.9%. So it doesn't look good globally. Of course, it looked a little bit better in the US in particular, but it's going to be hard to really determine what's going to happen here after all of these hikes are said and done, because it doesn't mean that just because the CPI data is low, or they only decide to raise it by 50 points instead of 75 points or higher, that the economy is actually performing well. The kind of feeling I'm getting from this, though, is that we are going to possibly have a reversal on this expectations of 50 BPS. And if we do get a 75 BPS, you can expect all markets, including cryptocurrency, to go down. The minutes are from last month's meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee, which is the Fed's monetary policy panel led by Jerome Powell. But more than interest rates coming up during the meeting, the financial stability of digital assets, particularly stablecoins, was also discussed, according to the minutes. Bitcoin and most other major digital asset prices changed little following the release of the meeting minutes. The largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization was trading by 0.4% higher in the 30 minutes after the release, but was down about 1% over the past 24 hours. Bitcoin has declined for 4 consecutive days after rallying last week. The FOMC boosted the interest rate by a robust 75 basis points in July, and we're waiting to see what happens here in August, as part of its hawkish monetary campaign to tame inflation, which has hit a 4-decade high. The committee, which meets regularly to set U.S. monetary policy, is widely expected to increase the rate by a similar amount at its September meeting. However, according to the FOMC minutes, quote, as the stance of monetary policy tightened further, it likely would become appropriate at some point to slow the pace of policy rate increases while assessing the effects of cumulative policy adjustments on economic activity and inflation, end quote. According to the minutes, the Fed will continue to hike interest rates until inflation lowers to 2%. And that means, obviously, we are going to have an increase this month. It likely would be appropriate to maintain that level for some time to ensure that inflation was firmly on the path back to 2%, the minutes said. The U.S. Central Bank has raised interest rates 4 times this year, including increments of 75 basis points, a historically large increase at its last 2 meetings. The minutes also show concern about crypto, in particular stablecoins, and their threat to financial stability and creating bank runs. And of course, obviously, that is going to be a concern for the banks, but here we go. Quote, while the recent turmoil in digital asset markets had not spread to other asset classes, these participants saw digital assets rising importance and growing interconnectedness with other segments of the financial system, as underscoring the need to establish a robust supervisory and regulatory framework for this industry that would appropriately limit potential systemic risks, end quote, the minutes said. Some FOMC members called for stronger oversight and regulation of certain crypto-related institutions. Look, what we have been seeing in Argentina, for example, and I know we harp on it a lot, but it was utilizing the blockchain to essentially thwart inflation for basically the segment of the population that isn't necessarily considered rich or wealthy. And that means that they were doing this in a way that was getting around the typical financial system. Previously, what you had to have in some place like Argentina was enough money to interact with a bank that had international services, so that when there was huge inflation and in that country, they would be able to put their money into a reserve currency like the US dollar. This was only available, once again, to people that had enough money and clout to essentially have these options. What cryptocurrency allowed people to do was hop into the cryptocurrency market and purchase basically stable coins that were backed by the US dollar to avoid inflation of their own currency. This is a good thing for the people, but it's a negative thing, obviously, for large banks, etc., especially international banks. And I think that's why you see them start to target this as a systemic risk, because it is a systemic risk to the establishment. Let's get into Bitcoin mining hardware, and the firm Canaan sees prolonged headwinds after challenging quarter. The CEO of Beijing-based Canaan described the second quarter as a challenging period due to a slumping Bitcoin price and COVID-19 lockdowns in various cities in China. Supercomputing services provider Canaan said tougher market conditions will hurt its performance in the coming months after a difficult second quarter. Revenue at the Beijing-based company rose 53% from the year earlier period to 1,653 million won, which is 247 million US dollars, the firm said Thursday. Earnings per share were $3.53, or 53 cents per American Depository Share, ADS, surpassing Seeking Alpha's estimates of 39 cents per ADS. The CEO described the quarter as a challenging period due to the Bitcoin price tumbling below $20,000 in June and COVID-19 lockdowns in various cities in China. The lower Bitcoin price will bring prolonged headwinds to their performance in the coming quarters, he added. Bitcoin miners' margins were slashed following a market crash that pulled the world's largest currency below $20,000 in early June. They have also been faced with soaring energy prices in recent months, brought to a head by the war in Ukraine. Computing power sold fell to 5.5 million terahashes per second from 5.9 million terahashes per second. Canaan responded to the tougher conditions by dropping prices on spot sales, which it said will lead to dramatic decrease in gross margin during the second half. Computing power sold fell to 5. Okay, they repeated that twice. Looking forward to the coming quarters, we see a tougher market environment from the lower Bitcoin price level, overall increased energy, and various pandemic and geopolitical uncertainties globally, which may all jeopardize the demand and price for our products, CFO James Xing said. Canaan's NASDAQ-listed shares rose 4.6% to $4.09 in pre-market trading at the time of writing, so they are still going up in valuation. Overall, though, obviously, what you are seeing is essentially the hardware companies start to suffer from margins. But if we look at someone like Bitmain, they aren't really struggling that much. So, it doesn't seem that terrible to me, because what you have is essentially companies that were selling at very, very high margins now being forced to sell at lower margins. And in the ASIC mining community, that doesn't necessarily bode like negative to me. I think that all of these prices need to come down for ASIC mining hardware, and I think that there needs to be more competition in the market, and margins do need to be lower because they're selling so much that it should be at a point to where, hopefully at some point small hobbyist miners can afford to participate within it. I don't know. That's just how I see it. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.